I'm Daniel, and I'm 54 years old. I might have laughed incredulously 10 years ago if you had told me that the young girl who had pleaded with me to braid her hair for school would one day act as though I didn't exist at her wedding. The strange thing about family, though, is that the individuals you give the most to frequently feel entitled to even more. Occasionally, they only recognize your worth when the credit card is declined. Grace was 9 years old when I first met her. Olivia, her mother, and I had all experienced challenging divorces, though hers was a little more messy than mine. Jeremy, her ex-husband, was rarely present. Twice a year, he would stop by, leave a check, and sometimes grab Grace some ice cream before disappearing for 6 months. Olivia and I, meanwhile, were steadily constructing something. I was always there for the school performances, the bruised knees, the late-night math assignments, and the first heartbreak, but I wasn't attempting to take the place of anyone. Even if it was inconvenient, I showed up. It was really inconvenient. She eventually began referring to me as Dad. Neither did I ever beg for it. Indeed, I informed her at an early age that I would never attempt to assume that role unless she specifically requested it. When daughter said, "Thank you, Dad," after graduating from middle school, I'll admit that I started crying. Olivia grabbed my hand as if she understood my meaning. I helped her acquire her first automobile, a safe used Honda that I had saved up for, and I paid for her braces. I drove the U-Haul myself and spent 2 nights assembling IKEA furniture in her dorm room after she was accepted to her ideal college. I was there every Christmas, birthday, and any other Tuesday when she forgot her umbrella. Because I loved her, not because I had to. However, when she turned 20, something changed. At first, it was subtle. The thank yous became increasingly infrequent. She started making transactional phone calls. Then, in her senior year, Jeremy made a significant comeback. Apparently, he had changed his ways. On Facebook, he began sharing old pictures of them together with the message, "I'm so proud of my little girl," while neatly omitting Olivia and myself from the picture. Like she was famished for his praise, Grace slapped it up. I didn't hold her accountable. Even if their parent only comes up when it's convenient, every child wants to be wanted. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel as though I had been the stand-in teacher the entire time. The engagement followed. She was overjoyed. At first, I truly felt thrilled for her. I recall the diamond glinting in the light as she waved her hand in front of us while I was seated on the couch. I gathered Olivia into an embrace after she gave me a clap. I said, "We're very proud of you." When Grace answered, she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Regards. Just knowing that both of my parents will be present to accompany me down the aisle makes me happy." I blinked. Olivia cleared her throat and gave me a quick look. "You mean she started, but Grace interrupted her?" "Of course," she answered, referring to Jeremy. "I mean Dad. Not the guy who stayed up with her when she had the sick or taught her how to ride a bike. Not me." Back then, I dismissed it. I told myself it was only a phase, perhaps a moment of sentiment. She was attempting to establish a bridge by getting back in touch with her roots. That I could accept. For it, I could even move aside. However, the evidence continued to mount. Whenever we were among other people, she began calling me Daniel and Jeremy Dad solely once more. She changed her social media bios back to her real surname after removing my last name, which had previously been Grace Thompson. I wasn't asked to speak by her. She smiled, nodded, and asked if I could pay the $12,000 venue deposit when I kindly offered to assist with wedding expenses. Reimbursement is not mentioned. No, I'm grateful. I just thought I'd take care of it. Yes, I did. I knew Olivia couldn't stand to watch her daughter's special day go awry, but not for her. I promised myself that I wouldn't be offended. That I was acting out of love and for the family. However, as the months went by, I began to feel less like a father figure and more like an ATM with legs. Olivia also took note. She made an effort to calmly and methodically discuss it with Grace, but Grace would cut her off, accusing her of attempting to guilt-trip me for wanting my true father in my life. I didn't realize how much that word hurt. I overheard a talk that I shouldn't have overheard the week before the wedding. I had heard Olivia and Grace conversing in the kitchen when I stopped in the hallway after arriving home early from work. "Grace," Olivia remarked in a stern but hushed voice, "he's paid for almost everything. You cannot simply act as though he doesn't exist." Jeremy was never as much of a parent to you as he has been. Grace laughed. He can choose to do that. Nobody made him. Olivia pressed. You used to call him Dad. She snapped. That was before I had a real one again. Before they realized I was there, I walked back out the door. I said nothing at all. Until the gaslight came on, I just drove. On the day of the wedding, I dressed in my finest suit. Before I got the knot just right, I had to tie my tie 3 times. I arrived early, assisted with chair setup, interacted with the caterers, and ensured the sound system was operational. When I walked past Grace, she hardly acknowledged me. With a cologne so potent it could have cleared a room, Jeremy arrived late. Like a soldier coming home from battle, she squealed and gave him a hug. I watched it all from a distance, feeling like a supporting character in a film that I had paid for but couldn't be the star of. I took a seat close to Olivia and kept silent during the ceremony. Grace smiled and put her arm around Jeremy's as the officiant asked who was escorting her down the aisle. Don't bring me up. Not even a look. It was not well received. Jeremy was in the father-daughter dance. In her speech, she expressed gratitude to her mother, her amazing new in-laws, and my amazing father Jeremy, who returned to my life at the perfect time. My name was never mentioned by her. Not once. I didn't cause any trouble. I stayed. When someone glanced in my direction, I grinned. Something was falling apart within, so I clapped, toasted the pair, and shook hands. A gradual, silent burn. I was gathering my jacket at the back table after the cake was cut, and most of the guests had left when Grace came up to me. She appeared dazzling and self-satisfied, the type of fatigue that follows a full day of celebration. She gave me a piece of folded paper. As if we were simply paying a tab after lunch, she remarked with a smile, the final balance. I assumed you would want to finish it before our flight tomorrow. I spread the paper out. My jaw tensed at the figure. I gave her a look. She grinned, anticipating that I would agree and get my wallet as usual. I didn't. I turned at that moment and, without a word, walked straight past her, down the stairs, into the parking lot, and into the night. That night, I didn't get any sleep. Not because I was upset. It would have been simpler. In fact, I didn't feel hurt at all. Something colder was what I felt, like if a door had silently closed inside of me and I had neither the will nor the energy to open it ever again. 4 hours, I gazed at the ceiling, seeing how the shadows changed as the headlights went by outside my bedroom window. Olivia was obviously agitated and sensed that something had changed when she arrived home late. I politely informed her, not tonight, when she attempted to speak with me. I knew what was coming, but I wasn't prepared to say it aloud. My phone was buzzing incessantly the following morning. Missed phone calls. I was shocked to receive messages from Olivia, Grace, and even Jeremy, who had hardly recognized me throughout the weekend. I paid them all no attention. Rather, I sat in my home office, brewed coffee, and took out a big notebook that said, Wedding Expenses. Each invoice, wire transfer, and receipt is carefully arranged. The total came to somewhat less than $38,000. Including the costly last-minute additions Grace simply had to have, I had paid for more than 80% of the event. That ludicrous champagne tower, a late-night taco bar, and imported decorations. What's the kicker? She gave me that last balance. The bill was unofficial. It was merely a handwritten total that she had written down herself, including line items that I had already paid. She had essentially double-billed me, and she believed that I would be too sentimental or lacking in courage to confront her about it. That Sunday, I spent the day disputing everything with the venue and all of the vendors I had paid directly. I submitted the emails, receipts, and evidence of payment. I opened up a joint account with Olivia to allow her to make last-minute purchases before the wedding, and I froze the remaining amount of the wedding cash there. I also sent a brief message to Grace. Going future, I will no longer be liable for any portion of your wedding expenses. You and your biological father are responsible for any unpaid debt. Kindly use your mother for any future correspondence. I hope your new life is filled with success. I didn't sign it at all. I simply pushed the submit button and shut down my phone. Olivia and I had the talk that evening. An actual one. Stop tiptoeing. She was devastated. It's about us, not just Grace. About the way it had all transpired. She acknowledged that she had observed a change in Grace's conduct, but she hoped it was due to stress or anxiety. She said, "I thought she'd come around. After she saw everything you had done for her, I thought." I answered softly, "She did see. She simply didn't give a damn." Olivia remained silent. The days that followed were hectic. Grace wrote a long, pathetic email. To justify, not to apologize. She claimed that although she didn't mean to offend me, she shouldn't have to attempt to please others because it was her day. She also mentioned that, given that I was the sole reason her wedding had taken place, she felt I was being immature by leaving and ignoring my obligations, which was rich. I didn't answer. Jeremy called a week later. "Yes, exactly." The man who had arrived late, danced, posed for pictures, then left without paying $1 for the wedding now had the gall to leave a message that said, "Man to man, I think you overreacted. You are aware of girls and their fathers. It's sentimental. I was there for her when she needed me. She chose her true family, don't punish her for it." I sat looking at my phone as if it had grown teeth. He took one step and then another. When Jeremy was too busy and Grace was admitted to the hospital at the age of 13 due to appendicitis, I stepped in. She was too ashamed to tell anyone that I had stepped in when her financial help stopped during her sophomore year. For 10 years, I had stepped up every day without ever requesting recognition. However, after purchasing a watch for her and standing next to her in a tux, Jeremy unexpectedly won Father of the Year. At that point, I made the decision that I would not simply go. I wanted to be clear that I was tired of being used. I instructed the accountant who managed my personal funds to start closing the joint account over the phone. My will was revised. Grace was removed from the beneficiary list. I contributed a substantial sum to a foster youth scholarship fund. Children who, in contrast to Grace, genuinely required assistance. I then sent Olivia one last letter. Not vindictive. Not upset. Just the last one. I clarified in it that I didn't hold her responsible for the incident. Not totally. However, I couldn't continue to give my all to a family that just valued transactions and numbers. I assured her that although I still loved her and always would, I had to preserve what little dignity I still had. As a backup plan, I moved into a condo across town that I had secretly bought months previously, leaving the letter on the kitchen counter. Although I had never imagined using it, I had a gut feeling that I would. Perhaps there was a reason I was waiting. Weeks went by. Then a month. Olivia made several attempts to get in touch. Grace didn't. According to a mutual friend, she and Jeremy attempted, but were unsuccessful, to obtain a personal loan to pay for the remaining wedding expenses. It seems that they were taken aback by the affluent stepfather's unexpected transformation into a ghost. Olivia then sent me a message one afternoon when I was at work. She is present. She desires to speak. Please. She's in tears. I took a while to respond. I recalled all of the smiles I had given that girl while I sat at my desk and stared at the message. I believed that every little moment of parenting had significance. Each and every dollar. Every night when you can't sleep. Everybody looks proudly at graduation. "Don't worry, I've got you," they all whispered. I got up after that, packed my briefcase, and headed home. Grace was sitting on the couch in the living room with her hands clasped and her eyes red when I stepped in. When she spotted me, she got up. "Daniel," she said. However, I raised a hand, and everything changed as a result of what I said and how she responded. I remained silent as she opened her mouth once more. "Be calm." Managed. After passing her and placing my briefcase on the table as if I had just returned from a typical workday, I turned to face her. Actually got to meet them. With something firmer, not with fury. Something definitive. I mentioned that when you were 13 years old, you pleaded with me to attend the father-daughter breakfast at your school as you didn't want to be by yourself. You mentioned that it had been 6 months since Jeremy last texted. I brought your favorite muffins, took the morning off, and wore that terrible blue tie you liked. You told everyone I was your father while holding my arm. Grace blinked, her cheeks flushed with shame or humiliation, her lips pulled into a tight line. I was unable to tell. "Do you recall that?" Quietly, she asked. "Grace, I remember everything. Since I seen everything. I wasn't keeping score either. Then no. However, it seems that someone was." She twisted her fingers while glancing down at her hands. "I made a mistake," she remarked. "I am certain that I did. I think I was attempting to reconcile the situation. Jeremy desired greater involvement. I had no idea that would cause you such pain." I cocked my head. "Didn't care or didn't think." She winced. "It's unfair." "What is unfair?" I interrupted in a quiet but firm voice. "Did you charge me to sit at a table that I wasn't actually invited to? Despite my repeated reminders to let it go, you continued to walk by me. I endured every slight, omission, and erasure of 10 years of my life while I sat there. I still had to pay for the napkins, though." She was surprised by that final sentence. She raised her head, perplexed. "Napkins, personalized monogrammed napkins," I responded, nearly giggling at the ridiculousness. "Your new last name on linen costs $4.72. The one I don't belong to." "Quiet," she said. "I didn't mean for it to be like this." I simply became enamored with the prospect of seeing my biological father at last. I pondered. I interrupted. "You thought I'd just take it, but I'm softer now." "As usual." Then, with red eyes, Olivia left the hallway. She must have been paying attention. Grace turned to her like a lifeline, but she remained silent. "Tell him, Mom." Olivia, however, simply shook her head slowly. "Grace, no. Not now." Perhaps for the first time, Grace realized that sentiment and guilt would not save her as she glanced between us. She had no idea how to keep herself steady because the earth underneath her was moving. "I didn't think you would simply vanish," she continued, her voice breaking. "I didn't vanish," I said. "I simply quit being there for those who use me as a tool. At your wedding, you made a decision. I'm currently creating one." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel anything rise in reaction. Not sympathy. Not contentment. Nothing but silence. She said, "I come to apologize. To make things better." "No," I replied. "To stop the fallout, you came. It's not the same thing." She deflated abruptly and sat down. "That's it, then. You just finished." I stared at her for a while. I said, "I don't know. However, I am aware that after such a period of silence, forgiveness cannot be demanded. You have to earn it. I can't give that out like another check, either." She lowered her shoulders and, for the first time, made no attempt to explain, complain, or dispute. She simply sat there, encircled by the ruins of a love that she had destroyed without even realizing it until it was too late. After gathering my belongings and giving Olivia a single nod, I made my way out the door. As I got there, Grace's voice trembled and she shouted out behind me, "How can I make this better?" Without turning around, I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. "To begin, you don't ask me to tell you," I said. After that, I left. I didn't go too far. Only a block away. To take a breath. To get my mind straight. I felt certain that I was done being taken advantage of, even if I wasn't sure if it would last forever. And what took place over the next few days? That's when the real deal came. I couldn't get my phone to work the following morning. No messages. No calls were missed. I'm not sorry. Just a weird silence I hadn't experienced in years, and an empty inbox. And in spite of everything, I checked to see whether she had truly let this go without a fight, not because I anticipated she would grovel. She did. There was nothing for 3 days. Olivia sent a single text message that said, "I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. I needed distance, but I wasn't truly mad with her. Everyone had built their lives on me for years, and now that I was no longer there, the gaps were becoming visible. I had had enough of playing the dependable supporting role. I wanted to know if anyone could recall who had been in possession of the camera the entire time. My office door was knocked on the 4th day. Not the condo where I actually operated my consulting firm. With a slightly nervous tone, my assistant buzzed in. "A young woman is present. Grace," she says. "There's no appointment for her." I stopped. Initially, I wanted to urge her to send Grace away, but I was intrigued by my assistant's pronunciation of her name. Perhaps exhausted. Or anxious. I said, "Send her in." Grace entered softly, like someone entering a church or a hospital ward, but without the haughtiness she had exuded like perfume. She wore little makeup and had her hair tied back. No high-end handbag. No arrogant grin. It was just her and a little folder she was carrying. Without a word, she sat across from me and opened the folder. There were several receipts within. Bank records. Breakdowns of payments. A well-formatted letter that was typed and headed, Wedding Expense Reconciliation Report. She moved it to me across the table. She whispered, "I went through everything. Each and every seller. Each transfer. Each line item. I made calls to the caterer, the venue, and even the florist. I listed the amount you paid and the amount I owe you. I divided it up into a 3-year payback plan and added interest. I'll sign it if you accept the conditions." I blinked. She wasn't in tears. She wasn't pleading. She was doing the one thing I hadn't anticipated, simply sitting there, accepting responsibility. "I hated it," she continued, "but I got your message. I initially believed that you were being petty and too theatrical. However, I then began to consider it from your perspective rather than mine. I recalled the 6-hour drive you made back from a business trip because I needed assistance proofreading my undergraduate essay and had forgotten it was due. To get to a conference in another state, you left at 5 o'clock after sitting with me until 2 in the morning. You didn't even mention it once again. You just succeeded." She lowered her gaze to her hands. "And I remembered my 16th birthday celebration, where Jeremy promised to attend but never did. You presented it to me as if it were no big deal after driving around town in search of the final volume of that beloved book series that was out of print. I also gave you a hug. Since I wasn't missing him at all at the time, I gave you a nice hug." Although her voice wavered, she managed to steady it. I recalled everything, and my feelings worsened as I recalled more. I realized that I had removed you from my story as well as from the wedding, as if you were a stand-in till the actual father arrived. At last, she looked directly into my eyes. "However, you were never a stand-in. The only person who stayed was you." I remained silent. I was unable to. I wasn't sure I trusted my voice yet, and my throat had clenched. She answered, "I'm not pleading with you for forgiveness today. However, I wanted to let you know that I can now see it. Everything. And I'll put everything right. With time, not with words. With action." I opened the folder. The figures were correct. It was a decent plan. She had even added a provision stating that the amount would become fully payable if she failed to make 2 consecutive payments. The money wasn't the point. It had never been. However, she was aware of that. And for that reason, this was important. I finally nodded after a long pause. "Okay," I replied. "Let's check your level of seriousness." She let out a deeper breath than one of relief. Perhaps resolved. 6 months have passed since then. She has since made all of her payments on schedule. Tiny at first. This is $150. There, $200. But constant. She has shown up more than that. Every week, she makes a call. She asked me to join her and her spouse for supper. Only the 3 of us. No big speeches. No phony excuses. Just an opportunity to speak. To chuckle. To begin anew. Olivia and I also went through our own experience. Our reconciliation was not immediate. We moved away. We also spoke more openly in that room than we had in years. Now, we're meeting up once more, cautiously. Slowly. As if 2 people were learning to trust each other while keeping their eyes open. Last week, Grace asked me if I would consider being involved in the life of her unborn child. A few months from now. When she asked, her voice trembled as if she thought I would answer no. I didn't. I promised to give it some thought. Then I grinned. I've prepared a number of enjoyable bedtime stories. She sobbed. This time, happy tears. We're not flawless. Scars remain. Scars, however, signify healing rather than forgetting. And I don't feel invisible for the first time in a long time. I felt noticed. For who I was, not for what I offered. Who I am. And sometimes, that is the most potent kind of retaliation. Not the quiet way out. Not the icy farewell. But turning into someone they can't ignore anymore. Because I didn't leave to make them feel bad in the end. I went outside to remind myself that I was still important. And now, they now also know it.